Welcome to Born to Ramble with me, Nikki. I need to let you know right away that this is my third take because I cannot stop swearing. And that is because I am one of these poor suckers who is spending hours of my life looking for a job only to be interacting with bots all week long. So I took some time, I took some deep breaths. I've come back on. I'm going to try to tactfully articulate to you some really positive announcements before we go down the rabbit hole to hell, literal hell, that is my job search journey. It is consuming me. And I wish that was not the truth because there's so much to be happy about. For example, the weather. Oh, that's wrong. It's going to be 100 degrees and 90% humidity for the next 10 days. Okay, so if anyone ever asks me, I have good news and bad news, which do you want first? I always say the bad news first because I like to end on a high note. So that's why I am going to give you the job report before I give you my good news. And I hope that by the time I'm done telling you all this, I can still remember the good news. So, as I said in my last post, I added the green open to work circle on my LinkedIn post. And I thought, this is humbling. I am letting the world know that I am available. I am at their mercy. But do you know what happened instead? I was exploited. I immediately got a message from Barbara Thompson, who spells her name Babara, but of course I didn't notice that until I interacted with her for like 3 messages. So Barbara, who definitely has a fake profile, but it looks really good, she contacted me. She's a recruiter, and she gave me this job, which, like, only in retrospect, because you go into it so optimistic thinking, oh my God, I humbled myself. I did the right thing. I put the green circle on, the green circle of humiliation. Maybe it's going to pay off. But no. So I think what she did is she just took my profile, she put it in OpenAI, and then she came back and said, hey, I have this position for you. And guess what? It pays $175,000 to $200,000. I said, you're kidding, Barbara. You're kidding. So I sent my resume, blah, blah, blah. Now this bitch has my phone number and my email address. Stupid. So Barbara was catfish number 1. Catfish number 2 was Andrew White. I should have known. But again, you want to believe that Andrew White, whose email address is at gmail.com and not a credible agency. You want to believe that he's a real person who's going to help me get a job. He sent me a more modest offer. So his offer was starting at $75,000. It's almost like he's been watching my movies because I said I need a minimum 75. And it was also a really nicely written message. It seemed legit. So I wrote with Andrew for a few back and forths, and then here's when I started to get suspicious. He said, can you do Microsoft Teams? I said, yes. He said, I'm going to coordinate with the hiring manager and get you set up to speak with him. Well, that's like almost unheard of anymore. You don't get to speak to the hiring manager until like month 3. You have to go through 13 interviews first and take an assessment on who you think you are and who others think you are and how you think you should behave at work and how you behave in your personal life. And if you haven't looked for a job for a while, I'm not even kidding. This is what they're asking of you. Hours of work before you can even talk to a person. So you can understand why I've dedicated my life to making videos of me complaining. All right, so Andrew says he's going to hook me up with this guy. Within seconds, I get a link to a Microsoft Teams thing. It took me to a profile of a guy named Kevin, Ariison. And I thought, that is a weird name. So I Googled that name, and the only thing that came up was Kevin Harrison, who's a sexual predator in Benton County, which is near where I live. So I thought, that's really odd that someone who's the hiring manager wouldn't have a LinkedIn profile, and there's nothing about this guy on the internet. So then he had a profile picture, so I reverse searched like Google search by image. Guess what? They took the picture of some CEO from some big New York company and used that picture. So when I was writing with Kevin, I said, it's so weird. You look just like this guy, Thomas, from this company in New York. He didn't respond to that. He just said, send me your resume. So then I said, I'd like to interview you on my podcast. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, yes, I'd like to interview you because I'm going to do an episode on people who catfish job hunters. Because what is the point of this? Are you just trying to get emails and phone numbers? Do I need to get a burner phone to apply for jobs? I am so over it. So the next insane thing that happened this week on the job search, one of the assessments I took this week, which claimed it was only going to take 8 to 10 minutes and it took closer to 30, it had a personality test. I've taken these before, but this one was weird because it would have 6 questions, and then every time I would answer 6 more would appear, which is why the test kept taking longer and longer. It gives you 4 words, and you need to choose the word that you're most like and then the one that you're least like. The problem is, all the words are terrible. Irritable, cynical, combative, or hostile. And I don't even know which one I'm the least. I mean, right now, I'm the most irritable. I might be mostly hostile right now. God, it is just so frustrating. I'm going to frickin' lose it. I am going to lose it. Add to that I started my son this week started preschool. I have to do this drop off and pick up. Another insane, stupid, poorly orchestrated thing. There needs to be an entire frontage road dedicated to drop off and pick up for this preschool, because my entire town is like shutting down from 7:30 to 8 so the kids can get into school. And then after school yesterday, I left my house like pretty happy. I drove for 4 minutes. I got to a 4-way stop. We didn't move for 13 minutes. So yeah, then I was a little hostile. When I actually get a job, it will be so relaxing compared to trying to get a job. Bye-bye. Let's move on to the good news. First good news, I had a short story accepted to a literary journal. It's going to be published in September. I'm very excited about this. This is a story that I actually read on my podcast in one of my earlier episodes. It's called Work to Death. Please have a listen if you're interested. It's very funny. Ironically, it's about how jobs kill people. I wrote that story in 2015, and I don't think it really hit its audience until now. Second bit of good news, I partnered with actually someone I want to represent, and that is worldofbooks.com. So I have an affiliate link in my description or whatever it is, show notes, what have you, for worldofbooks.com. And if you're not familiar, worldofbooks.com is an awesome online bookstore. I get pretty much all my books from there because they always have this thing. It's either buy 3, get the 4th free. And most of the books are really cheap anyway. And you get free shipping after $29. So today's story, there's going to be kind of like a second part to this story. And I should also let you know that I wrote this from the emergency room. Here we go. It was a beautiful morning. I got up at 7:03. Today was the day I'd board a plane for Des Moines, Iowa to see my friend Molly and enjoy an annual conference we love to attend. I packed Pete into his duffel bag carrier and managed to get Otto dressed and in the car with Gatorade and a granola bar all before 8 o'clock, just as planned. Now, I suppose you're thinking Pete would accompany me on the trip. Negative! When I told Otto that Pete, Tootie, and Otto would all be staying at Daddy's house, he said, "Too many people!" The only thing between me and my flight was a trip to Starbucks, and to celebrate my long weekend getaway, I added a shot to my Trenta Black Ice coffee. I congratulated myself for getting everything done in a timely manner. Cheers, self! I parked at the airport, went through security, and sat at my gate to people watch for the few minutes before we'd board the plane. 2 girls were putting on makeup even though they already had loads of makeup on. They posed in their compact mirrors and widened their eyes, looking at themselves from different angles. There was a blonde and a dark blonde. The light blonde had white fingernails, a giant hat on her head, and another on the seat next to her. Must be going somewhere tropical, I thought. The dark blonde had only one hat. Her skin was the color of rust, a spray tan gone wrong. A family of 3 entered the area, loudly. The mother was wearing a real fur coat. The son, about 12 years old maybe, wore Gucci everything, head to toe. The dad was very cool, with great hair and a vintage t-shirt that probably cost $110. They all had backpacks shaped like ski boots. The flight crew had called groups 1 through 4, and then Joyce came on the speakers to say anyone with overhead luggage would need to check it because there was no more room. I only learned that her name was Joyce when I got up to the counter, but there are already too many characters in this story without names, so let's start using Joyce's name ASAP. I was in group 6, so I got in line to check my bag. A woman with a baby blue suitcase and headphones came to me and asked, "Did they say we have to check our bags?" I nodded. "I didn't hear." She pointed to her giant headphones. While we waited in line to check our bags, a separate line of people from groups 1 through 5 boarded the plane. The girls with the giant hats, it turned out, were just 2 of a whole gaggle of girls with fake tans and giant hats. They were all scanning their boarding passes with no trouble until the blonde with white fingernails tried. Maud, the American Airlines representative, told her she'd need to wait until her group was called. "So I can't just go with my friends?" The other 3 very tan girls with giant hats were in the jet bridge waiting for her. "Your friends aren't in group 9, just you." The girl turned around and passed all of us as she squawked, "Wow, cranky." She stood next to the lady with the headphones who asked, "She wouldn't let you get on?" I gotta wait for my group to be called, even though I was right there, like, oh no. Headphones laughed. "I thought she called groups 4 through 9, said 2 hats. Another lady weighed in. "That's to check luggage. Anyone from groups 4 to 9 has to check luggage." I live for eavesdropping. When I got up to check my bag, Joyce very kindly told me my bag would go all the way to my destination. But just to make sure I heard her correctly, I said, "My final destination?" And then immediately wished I hadn't said final because how morbid. Then I got into Maud's line so she could scan my boarding pass. In front of me, there was a lady with 2 pink metallic carry-ons. Maud had to explain to her that not only can a person only have 1 carry-on, but in case she hadn't been listening for the past 20 minutes, all overhead luggage would need to be checked because we are out of overhead storage. The lady nodded. "Next time you need to check these at ticketing," Maud said. The lady just nodded again. Maud turned to Joyce. "What's with these people today? Something's in the air." I scanned my boarding pass and headed down the jet bridge to find the lady with the headphones and light blue suitcase negotiating with Cody from the luggage crew to please let her keep her suitcase. How did she get in front of me? Just then, here comes Joyce. "I already told her she has to check that bag." "I need to keep my bag." "Do not pink tag that," Joyce said to Cody, whatever that meant. Cody nodded and took my suitcase. "Thank you, Cody," I said. I was in seat 22C, 1 row from the back. I texted Derek, "I'm the only person on this flight who follows instructions." Then I turned off my phone. I took out my book and half listened as they started the safety announcements. I was skeptical about the book I was reading because there's a pedophile in it, and I'm very sensitive, especially when it comes to anything bad happening to children or animals, and even more so since I had Otto. Like 1,000,000% more sensitive. Still, I really liked this author and I thought she'd have a good story. So I was sitting there reading along when the story got too dark. It was more than I could take. I started to feel like I should switch to my light-hearted book about ladies in a hair salon. The next thing I knew, I thought I was just waking up and we were landing, but I felt really bad. I was looking at the seat in front of me and then I raised my very heavy head to see the aisle full of people, which would have made sense if we'd landed, but we appeared to be landing. Kitty corner from me, the lady who hadn't understood that she couldn't bring 2 giant pink carry-ons with her, asked me if I had a history of seizures. The flight attendant, a high school sophomore, maybe named Caden, just a guess, I'm sure he was well into his 20s, was rushing down the aisle toward me, and then he knelt down next to me with an oxygen mask and a tank. It quickly became apparent they were all looking at me. I held my hands to my chest, not because it hurt, but I was aligning my chakras. What happened to me? A different lady had taken the seat in front of me and was facing me, telling me to breathe and that her name was Sharon. "Are you a nurse?" Caden squealed. "Retired nurse." Then to me, "What's your name, honey?" "Nikki." She was talking with her hands, and I wanted to reach for them, but my hands wouldn't raise off my lap. One hand was holding my phone, barely. Then I thought, that's weird. Don't try to hold her hands. The flight attendant crouched next to me, saying, "Shit, shit," trying to get the oxygen mask working. He put the mask over my face and rested a huge 1960s oxygen tank between my legs. It was the teal green of old hospital linoleum squares. The flight attendant asked, "Can you pull the tab so it's tight to your face?" I really couldn't move my arms. Luckily, Sharon was there, still breathing with me, and she reached over to tighten the mask. I looked to my right, and a sweet girl across the aisle from me smiled. Then the pilot came on the air and said we were doing a medical emergency landing. Oh my God, I thought. "We're doing an emergency landing," Caden said, as if I hadn't just heard it. But then it occurred to me, they're landing for me. Sure enough, I glanced out the window and the scenery was diagonal. We were going down. I wonder where we'd land. Thank God we weren't over water. Soon, EMTs were coming down the aisle, and my neighbor had put my water and book back into my backpack. Caden was struggling with the mid-century oxygen tank. 2 friendly men talked to me and asked me if I could get up to walk. I apologized to my neighbor and smiled at the sweet girl across the aisle again. She was 30-ish, but cute, like a cuddly teddy bear that probably smelled like cinnamon rolls. One man in front of me held my hands in his blue latex gloves, and another EMT walked behind me. Because I was in row 22, in the ass of the plane, I walked by everyone. I noticed the lady with the real fur coat and her Gucci-clad son in row 17. Why weren't they in first class? Was that real fur? It had to be real fur, I was pretty sure. As we exited onto the jet bridge, there was Cody. That's weird. Did he come along with us? Then there was Maud, pushing a wheelchair toward me, and I recognized this carpet design. This was the Arkansas airport. We're still in Arkansas. They wheeled me into a corner of the gate area, and Maud sat next to me. The EMTs stood in a circle around me. "Nikki, my name is Kevin, and I'm going to help you today." 2 others introduced themselves, but I don't remember their names. Only that they were so kind, and I was sure they'd be able to get me back to 22C in no time. Although as I looked out the window back at the plane, I didn't feel like I could do it at all. Not yet. I'd need a little time to get it together, but maybe there was a later flight I could take. "Nikki, do you know where you are?" "Yes, I'm in Arkansas." "And where were you going today?" "Des Moines." "Do you know what day it is?" "Thursday, maybe?" "Okay, good. And how young are you?" They smiled at each other. Oh my God, I thought. I'm visibly old enough that they're trying to flatter me with age jokes. "I'm 45. "And when is your birthday, young lady?" "December 7th, 1980. "Okay, and one last question. How many quarters are in a dollar?" 4. I knew the answer to every question. Aced it. "And Nikki, can you tell me what happened today?" I was reading my book, and it was really disturbing. God, why was I talking like that? Like breaks between every word. It was bothering me, and I wanted to read a different book, and then I felt so bad. It was bothering me so much. How did you feel bad? And then I didn't say anything else. I just made a full body roll, like as if you were about to throw up and the bad sensation was going from your head to your stomach and back again. And then what happened? And then I woke up. Everybody was coming for me, and I felt really bad. An EMT woman with a stretcher had appeared. She said, "That's why I don't read books." One of the guys laughed, but Kevin continued with me. Are you seeing flashing lights, or did you see flashing lights? I shook my head. Are you dizzy? I made a face. I was the epitome of dizzy. Did you lose control of your bowels or wet yourself? No. Are you having chest pains, Nikki? No. Any pain in your arms? No. They're like, I moved them awkwardly. The blood isn't getting to them. Do you know what hospital you'd like to go to? Oh my God. So I'm going to a hospital. Washington Regional? It was the only one I knew. They all looked at each other. What are we close to? Kevin asked. We've got Mercy and Rogers or Bentonville. You guys pick, I said, now understanding I wouldn't be flying out today. Maud was still sitting next to me, a phone in her hand. It was her turn to ask a question. Is there someone you'd like to call? Yes, Derek. And who is Derek? He's my son's father. Do you know his number? Yes, I'm pretty sure. Are you sure or are you pretty sure? I tried to get my phone out of my pocket to show her Derek's number. I didn't remember putting it in my pocket, but I could see it and my hands were empty. I managed to get it out and turn it on. While it started up, I began wondering what had happened on the plane. I'd passed out a dozen times over the years, but this time was bad enough that I missed the takeoff and all of the commotion that must have ensued prior to all those people gathering in the aisle to look at me. And yet, Maud expected me to have a phone number memorized in the year 2026, and the EMTs were relying on me to know which hospital to go to. Then when I answered, they hemmed and hawed. How about a hospital with doctors? I don't care. Have you ever asked someone, where should we eat? And they say, oh, whatever, I like everything. So you pick a place and then they say, well, not that place. I had a boyfriend once from a very passive and indecisive family. His family came to visit us at Christmas, and we sat in the living room for over an hour, not making a decision about where to eat. What would happen if we just went somewhere, I asked. And they laughed. Awkwardly, of course, not taking a stance on whether or not that was actually funny or just so true. And we sat around looking at each other for another 90 minutes. My phone lit up, and I confirmed I'd been correct about Derek's phone number. I heard Maud introducing herself and explaining that I'd been the culprit in an emergency landing, derailing 100 anxious travelers from reaching Cancun, Aspen, and most notably, Des Moines. The EMTs were still undecided about the hospital. Can you just pick one, I asked? Derek can take me there. Oh no, honey, we're taking you in the ambulance. We need to keep that oxygen on you and get an IV going. So pick a fucking hospital then, I thought. But I said, Rogers, let's just go to Rogers. They put me on the stretcher and fastened belts across my ankles and thighs. The woman EMT approached me. All right, Miss Nikki, I'm Sierra and I'll ride with you today. Is that okay? Why did they keep asking me questions? I was so out of it and dripping sweat. Did you guys bring the barf bags, I asked, just in case. Inside the ambulance, the questions continued, and my legs and stomach were cramping so bad I felt like I needed to roll onto the floor. The stretcher was skinny with little room to move. Not that moving was an option with my legs strapped down. I wanted to pull my knees into my chest and put my head down. Do you know where we are? Fentonville, I said. Bentonville, Fayetteville, Farmington. That's where I live. I don't know where I am. Honestly, Sierra, do you know where we are? Because no one really knows what city the airport is in. Flight maps use Bentonville, but isn't that just because Bentonville is the most well-known town in Northwest Arkansas? As the home of Walmart headquarters? The airport acronym is XNA. What sense does that make? Is the airport in Highville? I'm pretty sure it is. If you look at a map, it appears to be in Highville. How about quit asking me rhetorical questions, Sierra? But I didn't say any of that. It was too much effort to speak, so I let her think I was a lost cause. Do you have any drugs or alcohol in your system? No, I was going to an AA conference, I said, and then wondered if she even knew what that was. But I didn't care enough to say any more. I feel really bad, I said, sweating and rolling my head against the waves of nausea. Do you know if you might have wet yourself? No, I didn't. Can you tell me your social security number, Nikki? I recited it perfectly. Do you work, Nikki? I was just laid off. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be. Has anything like this happened to you before? My job or just the passing out? The episode you had today, ma'am. Oh, yeah, lots of times. Do you know the last time it happened? Yeah, I was at Derek's and I fell off the toilet and chipped my tooth. And Derek is your ex-husband? No, just a friend. He's my son's father. You said you were reading a book when this happened. What was happening in the book? Was it like blood or something? It was just so disturbing. It was bad things happening to a boy, and I have a little boy. I started to choke up and quit talking. I feel so bad, I said. Let me get the IV in you, and then we'll give you some Zofran, and that should help the nausea. I hope you're good. I couldn't think of the word. My veins, they're hard, tight. I'll do my best. Sierra got the needle in on the first try, a victory. Then she loaded up a fat needle and squirted that into the tube. I could feel the cool medicine moving through my arm. At the hospital, she popped the doors and pulled out the bed, so I seemed to be hovering high above the ground. This is kind of freaky, I said. It's automatic, don't worry, I won't drop ya. Kevin came around from the front of the ambulance. How you doing, Miss Nikki? I gave him the 50-50 meh wave with my hand and a cringe on my face. Well, hopefully they'll get you feeling a lot better, he said. Do you know what room, Sierra asked? Room 12. Then she said to me, Nikki, we're going to room 12. My lucky number, I thought. My lucky numbers are 7, 8, 12, and 666. The emergency room was like any other. They moved me from the stretcher onto an equally flat bed, this one a bit wider. There were 3 nurses in my room, all younger than me, calling out phrases that meant nothing to me until one of them reported that according to the bed, I weighed 162 pounds. That is not right, I said. That is wrong. I weigh 150. Well, you've got a lot on you right now, one of them said. 12 pounds? Then I went back into my daze. I was quickly hooked up to a finger monitor, put into a hospital gown, and covered in stickers for an EKG. A nurse came in to give me a chest x-ray. Another came to ask me the same questions. Who are you? What happened? Where are you? Do you have an ID? So far, no one had asked for my insurance. How nice! As I waited for the next person to come into my room, I sat there, looking at my pale yellow hands. They looked so old with no color in them. Now and in the past, when I'd had my fainting spells, as I called them, my pulse and blood pressure tanked. The machines were beeping to alert someone of the low rate, but no one came. I had seen it get down to 19 beats per minute before, and I was only at 38, so I wasn't too worried. A knock on the door. It opened, and there was my doctor. He was like a little fridge, very muscular but short. His facial hair was perfectly trimmed, a longish beard that came down to a point. His teeth were practically sparkling. Hi, I'm Dr. Steve. Sorry we have to meet this way. Typical doctor-patient banter. Hi there, I said, feeling a little bit better. Just then, there was another tap on the door, and Derek peeped his head in. Nikki Settelmeyer, what are you doing? Derek, I smiled. Oh my God. He came in and hugged me, and I felt happy, embarrassed, and some of the holding it together began to slip as I started crying, let myself think about what had happened. How helpless I felt. And who is this to you? Dr. Steve asked. I don't know that man, I said. Co-parents, Derek said. Best friends. We share a child. Oh, well, hi, Derek. Nice to meet you. Dr. Steve went through the same spiel as all the others, asking me questions, what happened, what's my history, etc., etc. He determined I probably just passed out from a combination of not eating, drinking a high-powered coffee, and excitement for my trip. I didn't think it was that simple. Something terrible had happened. I was so confused and my stomach hurt so bad. We're just going to have you follow up with your primary care doctor and you'll want to get an MRI, but I think you're going to be okay, Nikki. The blood test came back fine. The x-ray and EKG look great. Sometimes these things just happen. I nodded. So if you want to go ahead and get dressed, we'll get you out of here. He gave a cheerleader wave and bounced out of the room. I'll give you some privacy, Derek said. I went to grab my sweatshirt, and that's when I felt it was wet. I smelled it, and it was definitely urine. I looked at my pants and saw they were wet too. I hadn't even noticed. Then again, I didn't really remember how I got from the wheelchair to the stretcher or the stretcher to the hospital bed. I smelled it again. Every person who asked me questions had asked if I peed myself. Like that was the thing that differentiated passing out from a seizure. I stuck my head out in the hallway. Derek, I peed my pants. He came back into the room. You did? Yes, I just saw my shirt and pants are wet and it stinks. We both stood there for a moment. I think we need to tell them, Derek said. Can you ask someone? Can you ask my doctor to come back? Derek went out to find someone, and I opened the drawer and cabinets in my little room until I found a plastic bag to put my pee clothes in. Luckily, I had a suitcase of new clothes I could change into, so I looked for different pants and a shirt. I heard Derek talking to my doctor in the hallway, and then right outside the door. "Hey," he said. I could tell he was trying to speak, so I couldn't hear him. "She's pretty articulate, and I know she sounds with it, but I'm telling you something isn't right." So I wasn't the only one who noticed. Dr. Steve and Derek came back in, and I told him about my wet clothes. "So we can do a CT scan, but if we do that, you won't be able to drive until you're cleared by a neurologist. And that could be 3 to 6 months. "Oh my God," I said. "Nikki, you have to do it," Derek said. I looked at Derek, realizing I didn't know what was happening to me anymore. I could see it in his eyes that he was scared too, and that made me more scared. "So let me get a nurse back in here, because we'll need to get you hooked up again to the monitors." I nodded. I sat back on the bed, and Dr. Steve once again gave his princess wave and exited the room. I looked down at my hands, more color in them now, but not much. "Something's wrong, Derek." I felt tears coming. "I'm really scared." I wiped my face with my sleeves. "I kind of feel like Dr. Steve wishes I would have left." "Don't worry about him. He's late for his protein shake." I nodded. "Maybe you can go on disability and I can be your caretaker." I laughed. All my friends are having the time of their lives in Iowa, and here I am in a puddle of my own piss. "Hey, good thing you brought a suitcase to the ER." "I know!" And then I got incredibly sad again. No driving. "I'm really glad you came, Derek. I'm scared." So that's today's story. I know it was a little bit of a bummer, but the good news is you can see me here. I'm doing great. I'm being kicked in the head left and right by these pre-employment tactics, but luckily I'm such a picture of health that it's mostly not phasing me. Thanks for watching another episode of Born to Ramble. I'm so happy if you stayed this long through the entire episode. You're an actual angel. I love you, and I'll see you next week.